In a move that sure did upset his Israeli handlers, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth had to cancel a scheduled meeting in Israel with Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, it's unclear specifically why he canceled the trip. We can speculate, though, because the trip was planned prior to the war against Iran getting reignited. We are now bombing Iran. And so, just to be clear, Hegseth was set to meet with Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz today, Wednesday, but that's not happening. The meeting was to come on the heels of the US carrying out a series of overnight attacks on Iran. Those attacks, by the way, continued into today. You have Qasem Island getting attacked. Bandar Abbas is getting attacked. So the bombings are a lot more intense and a lot more powerful than what we previously saw with the United States. When the MOU was a little fragile 10 days ago, and there were some tit for tat strikes between the US and Iran. Now it appears that the US is motivated to just go back to full-blown war. At least that's what it looks like. Trump is a wild card. You don't know. I mean, he just kind of shoots from the hip. And so we'll see how this plays out. But the fact that the war has been reignited is probably and likely the reason why Hegseth had to cancel his trip. But what's even more interesting is what they were set to discuss. So let's get into that. So Reuters reports that they were supposed to discuss the possible sale of F-35 fighter jets to Turkey with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, an Israeli source told Reuters. And Trump, who's currently at the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey, with Hegseth, announced just yesterday that he would lift the 2019 sanctions against Turkey in order to pave the way for the sale of the F-35s. Now, you might be wondering, why the hell did we have sanctions against Turkey? We did because Turkey purchased Russian S-400 air defense systems, which we had sanctioned. And Turkey is a NATO ally of ours, so they shouldn't have done that. So during Trump's first term, he's like, well, you violated our sanctions. And so as a result, we're gonna go ahead and sanction you. And so Turkey was effectively kicked out of the F-35 program. And for those of you who don't know what the program is, don't worry, because I didn't know what it was either. So it's the Department of Defense's largest procurement program. Okay, so Lockheed Martin manufactures the aircraft for the US Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy, and international partners and customers. 19 governments have agreed to purchase F-35s. Of those governments, 7 are US allies and considered partners that share the cost of development with the United States. So Turkey, a NATO ally, was removed because of the fact that they had purchased those Russian air defense systems. But Trump has recently changed his tune entirely, and I'm sure that Netanyahu is not happy about it. Here's what he said during a press conference during the NATO summit. I haven't totally made up my mind, but my inclination is to say, look, he's the Turkish president, or the Turkish president has done everything. He's helped us in so many ways. And you know who else has been good to us? China. Like, okay. China's been good to us. Actually, China has been kind of good to us because when we started the war with Iran, they decided to stop buying oil from the global market and tapped into their strategic petroleum reserves. That's a big deal because had they continued buying oil on the market with all this limited, with the limited supply as a result of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, oil prices would have skyrocketed. I mean, think about the population of China. So in some ways, China actually did help. I don't know if they did it intentionally to help us, but either way, there are some things that China has done that I think China deserves some credit for. But nonetheless, this move is sure to have upset the Israelis. Netanyahu, of course, went on CNN to say the following.
He is considering giving the country these planes, F-35s.
Well, as I said, it would destroy the power balance in the Middle East because Turkey, I think, has aggressive aspirations. I mean, they openly say that they want to restore the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire not only included Turkey, it included many other countries, included Syria, it included pieces of Jordan, included all of present-day Israel, included some Gulf countries. So this is not a force for peace and stability. And if you give this kind of radical regime that admittedly smiles to America when it is necessary, or smiles to the president of the United States when it's necessary. When you're given that power, you're going to see aggression in its wake. I wouldn't do that.
So our Secretary of Defense was set to meet with the guy you just heard from, Prime Minister of Israel, to basically discuss weapons procurement for a NATO ally of the United States. Now, look, personally, I don't think these weapons deals should be made at all. And there are other violations, regardless of whether Turkey's our ally or not. Like, you shouldn't be occupying Cyprus, for instance. Like, these types of things are problematic. And if you're an ally of ours, it doesn't mean that you just automatically get approval for certain weaponry, certain fighter jets, things like that. And also, what I'm really curious about here is how this is going to play out. Because guys, remember, Congress is supposed to be a branch of government that checks the executive branch. So it might appear as though Trump has the capability to do so many things unilaterally, but that's actually not true. And there are ways in which Congress could intervene to prevent the sale of the F-35s to Turkey. So for instance, the sanctions are codified in two laws, a provision in the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act and the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. So if Israel, which does not want this sale of F-35s to Turkey to go through, is, able to take advantage of their firm grasp of our Congress thanks to AIPAC funding of our politicians, do you think Congress might actually, push back against Trump and the sale of these F-35s? I mean, they weren't willing to put up a fight when it came to the war powers resolutions, basically preventing Trump from entering wars without congressional approval. They barely put up a fight at all when it came to that, right? But that was with Israel wanting the war. What happens when Israel does not want the sale of weapons that Trump is trying to pass through unilaterally, but Congress does have an avenue in which they can check the executive branch? Are they going to use that power? And if they do, what does that say? What does that say about their priorities and what motivates them to act? I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.